Dr. Aron D'Souza, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on.
So, for those who are unfamiliar with you or your journey, I'll just summarize real quick. You've won a lot of things in life that many people are jealous of. So, you've built a company and you exited part of that company. You have a master's in law from Oxford. If I'm reading this correctly, you have a PhD from the University of Melbourne. Very successful man by many people's standards. But I think today you are going to win the greatest award of all. Do you have any idea of what that is?
I believe that the greatest award that I could win in my life is to bring the next age of humanity into existence. It is said today that we live in the information age, and my dream is to take the world into the enhanced age, an age where our biology is no longer our limits and that we can become superhuman.
I love your answer, but your answer is way deeper than what my award is for you. And my award is you win the award for the most interesting spelling of the name Aron.
Well, thank you.
So, for those unfamiliar, Aron is your first name, Aron. First time I've ever seen that. So, congrats,
Thank you. Thank
Dr.
you.
D'Souza. You have won the award for the most unique spelling of Aron. Just quickly, how does it compare to some other significant awards and milestones that you've achieved in your life?
This is an amazing award. Thank you. I expect a plaque to be delivered to my office.
We'll make it happen. Um, in all honesty, very excited for this interview. There's a lot that I want to get into in very limited time. I typically start off with this question, and I think it's a good way to kick off podcasts because it gives the audience almost something to look forward to, or at least what they can expect from the interview. So, if someone's just clicked on this and they have no idea who you are or what you're building, why do you think they should stick around and listen to what you have to say?
I believe that the listener who stumbled upon this interview should stay to listen because no matter what challenges you have in your life, the story of my life and the story of the Enhanced Games can teach you something about how to overcome your limits, to believe you can do even more with comparatively few resources or even experience.
In what ways have you overcome your own limits?
When I was 16 years old, I wrote a plan for my life. Within 10 years, I achieved everything I thought that would take a lifetime to do. When I was 30, I reapproached the same question. The things that I thought would take me a lifetime, again, took me just 10 years. And now I feel like I'm able to achieve things so extraordinary and so huge that I couldn't even imagine they were capable of being done. And the reason why something so large as creating a new version of the Olympics is within my grasp is because I've raised my expectations. And really, uh, there are more miracles in this world today, not because there is magic, but it is because we have risen our expectations. And so you can perform miracles if you raise yourself up and believe you can do something so large that few others even think it's even remotely possible.
So you said you wrote a plan, and that just immediately triggers my brain to think about manifestation, visualization, if I could talk, and like all these words that people throw around whenever they talk about success, whether it's in business or sports or anywhere else. And I've spoken to athletes on this podcast, and they say, at the age of 5, I visualized that I was going to be the starting running back for the Chicago Bears. But like tactically, I guess first of all, do you believe in the manifestation aspect of it? And then if you do, like what's something that people could do tactically, like on a day-to-day basis to kind of live that theme of manifestation?
Yeah, I've never believed in this idea that you should just like visualize what you want and it will come, but rather you should write about it. And writing is a very powerful tool. And so, I always say there were probably a billion people who had the idea of the enhanced games. It was a skit on Saturday Night Live, right? I feel like every person in the pub has always talked about the idea of a sporting competition where you could use performance enhancing drugs. So a billion people thought about it, but how many actually sat down and wrote about it? Well, there were a few people. Wired magazine, some professors at Oxford, some comedians, maybe a few hundred. And then to actually write a business plan is even one greater step. And when you think about this for your own life, it is to start, I believe, with understanding your values. And once you understand your values, you can develop strategies or you can develop goals for living those values. And once you understand your goals, you can develop strategies for achieving those goals. And once you have those strategies, you can develop day to day policies that drive every single action you make. So, like, for example, I use a spreadsheet and I track every single calorie, carb, protein, and gram of fiber that I consume. And, it's made me very disciplined. And why do I do that? Is because I want to be strong and be healthy so I can achieve this extraordinary mission that I'm on. And that's an example of I have values, I have a goal, a strategy, and then now day to day policies that are dictated by a spreadsheet that is on a dashboard in my office.
I got two follow up questions. I'll start with this one. What do you say to the people who say you live an over optimized life?
That is a fair criticism, right? That is a very fair criticism. A lot of my friends and family say, Aaron, why don't you live in the moment? My mom often says to me, you have a beautiful house in London. You have a Ferrari in the garage. You're newly married. Why do you work so hard? And I'm sitting here in my office in Madison Avenue, New York City, and overlooking the New York Life Insurance building. And I look at the thousands of people who work in that building, and I say to myself, it is no one's life mission even to be the president of the New York Life Insurance Company, right? It is this boring place to work. It's not fundamentally improving humanity in any way. In contrast, I look around the people who are in my office today. What we are doing is not just about making more money or incrementally making the world a better place. It is about radically transforming all of humanity, right? We're not here to improve sport. We're here to upgrade humanity writ large. And that is a mission worth dedicating one's entire life to. And I think about the companies, the very few companies that have the potential to do that. OpenAI, make artificial general intelligence. Tesla, SpaceX, make humans interplanetary. Enhance, make superhumans, right? And I always say, no one is ever going to put being a Microsoft product manager on their tombstone. But many people will put the Olympic rings, the enhanced cross, or another mission that is truly worth working your whole life for.
Did you always have this this desire to want to want to build something as big as the enhanced games? And I asked that in part, you were alluding to, New York Life Insurance or Microsoft, right, as a product manager. And listen, I know plenty of people in those types of roles, and for some people, that is fulfilling. Like that is enough for them. Like they go to their 9 to 5, they clock in, they come out, they spend time with their family, do whatever on the weekends, and that's perfect for them. So those type of people definitely do exist. And like I said, many of those are in my life. But for the unique ones that come across like yourself, I feel like there's always this misunderstanding from the outside, it's similar to what your mom was saying. It's like, why do you work so hard? Like, why do all of this? Like, what? So I'm just curious, like, has that fuel always been there, or do you think that's been more of a recent development?
No, I think it's been a part of my life from the very, very beginning. As long as I could remember, I had dreams and aspirations of greatness, and um, my parents, my teachers always expected more of me. I was very blessed academically. I was a very gifted student, and and everyone around me expected greatness of me. Uh, and, I think it's very important to realize that if you are blessed with talent, I believe you have a moral obligation to use that talent to your best of your ability, because that is what took humans out of the cave and turned us into the beings that created the most amazing, extraordinary civilization. It is what distinguishes man from beast. Like, we have ambitions. No other species does, right? And our ambition is limitless. And there is something very special about that. And I think that is intrinsic in all human beings. And if we don't use our capabilities to our full potential, we are truly wasting this extraordinary gift.
You spoke about expectations and how those expectations existed, particularly when you were growing up. Do you think that there comes a point in time where high expectations become unproductive?
No, I think that uh, that we don't expect enough of ourselves, and we don't expect enough of our society. Like, I live in New York City, in the most expensive real estate in the entire world, and I step over a mountain of trash walking up the street. And I ask myself every morning, there are millions of the most talented people in the world who live in this city. Why has no one stood up and said, it is the mission of my life to fix this problem? Right. And I feel that is a tremendous waste. And ultimately, we must raise our expectations up, right? And too often we feel defeated by our present circumstances. Like, I look at the quality of political leaders we have today. Is it true that Zoran Mandani, Andrew Cuomo, and Eric Adams are the three best people to run the greatest city in the entire world? Like, that perplexes me, that we cannot get better people to run. Why aren't there more Barack Obamas? Why isn't the leaders of the left and the right as inspirational, as Jimmy Carter, or with the intellect of Richard Nixon? And I think it's because we do not expect enough of ourselves and our children and our society among us.
You know what's interesting? I want to get your thoughts on this. Is I guess first I'll start off with a question. Maybe we can lead into thoughts after that. But do you think that's mostly tied to complacency and just listen? At the end of the day, New York City has been the best city in the world for a while. Again, that might be slightly biased, but do you think that there's uh, you know, some level of complacency there? Not even just New York City, but America as a whole.
Yes, well, the process of creative destruction, which the great sociologist Schumpeter wrote about very cogently, um, has is an important one. And so, historically, at least in Europe, there was a great revolution at least once every 100 years, where there was a total societal upheaval that allowed the opportunity to reset all of the broken systems. This happens in corporations. Sears was the largest company in the world in the 1970s, and now hardly exists. In 50 years, I think Amazon will hardly be remembered. Even a business like Facebook, legacy Facebook is dead now, and we have a better product in Instagram. And there are these cycles of renovations that happen through disruption, but we have, for whatever reason, not allowed this to happen in America. Right? The U.S. Constitution was written nearly 250 years ago, and now there is no there is no motivation for real, deep, structural, systematic change.
How do you how do you combat complacency on an individual level? And I feel like you're the right person to ask this question because, like I said, you've sold a company, you're now building something huge. You're clearly still hungry, and we've talked about that desire. So, how do you personally combat complacency on your own individual level? And then, what would your advice be to people on how they can combat complacency within their own lives?
That's a tough one, because I've never felt complacent in my life. I've sold companies for millions and millions of dollars. I have enough in my bank account to retire for the rest of my life. Um, but I enjoy what I do. I'm on a mission that is very valuable, and I feel that, you know, why do I work, 12 plus hours a day every day? Because I know that if I don't bring the enhanced games into existence, um, no one will, right? And then this great opportunity we have, not just to create superhuman levels of sport, but also to, I believe, fundamentally cure aging, and make human longevity more possible, has a direct effect on me. I don't want to be 90 years old, crippled in a nursing home, saying, oh, I could have been the one who created the conditions by which we could have cured this infirmity. And I know that is my moral obligation. And I look at people like Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett, Rupert Murdoch. They're all in their 90s, and Charlie worked at 101. Um, and I say, I'm just 40 years old. I have achieved so much in the 16 years since I graduated from Oxford. And I ask myself, well, if I worked for another 50 years, what could I do? I could fundamentally transform human civilization.
Have you read the book Die with Zero by Bill Perkins? Or at least
I have
heard of
not.
the
No.
premise behind it? This might seem perhaps off topic, but I promise it's going to make sense. It's top of mind because I was listening to an interview that he did this morning, actually, on my drive. And essentially, the whole premise of the book and the premise that he supports is that, listen, you're going to die one day. Everyone we know is going to die one day. What's the point of saving all this money for some delayed gratification? 60 years from now, people save all their lives. They retire at 65. But at 65, you don't want to travel the world. You have maybe health issues, right? Like you'd much rather do that when you're 30 versus 65. And so his whole premise is spend money now, live your life, create memories that you can cherish for forever. And kind of ties back to like the whole thing that your mom was saying, Aaron, live in the now and enjoy some of the things that you have. Like, does the thought of regret ever come up in your mind, like that you're going to regret working all these hours? Like I understand, you want to build the enhanced games and you believe in the mission, but do you ever think to yourself, damn, like I really don't want to get to 70 and look back and all I remember is work? Does that ever cross your mind?
No, because I think about the lives of my immediate family members. My grandmother was an extraordinary individual. She built a successful business, small business, and was the leader of our family. And when she passed away a couple of years ago at age 96, I thought to myself, she has lived this extraordinary life, but never once was there was never a newspaper article about her, right? There was no book has ever been written. Uh, Her story will be easily forgotten to history, right? In contrast, I've led a very intentional life to leave a history behind. Profiles in every major newspaper in the world. A book by New York Times bestselling author Ryan Holiday about my work on the Gawker lawsuit, a Netflix documentary, right? And this is all part of the written history, so that in 1,000 years' time, I hope that individuals still look back and they go through the libraries of the great universities and say, "Oh, Aron D'Souza's life meant something," because there is this consolidation to the written form. You know, Billions of people have lived throughout history. How many can we remember from the Roman Empire? Maybe a few hundred, a few thousand, but most are gone, right? Most are dust to the past. But how do we live a life eternal is by creating a legacy that is consolidated to the written form, that is passed on to future generations, and making that vast intellectual contribution. And my goal is to lead a life where history will remember me.
At what point did it hit you? Like truly hit you? I'm not just saying, you thought about it, but truly hit you that you're going to die one day, that we're all going to die one day.
I've always been very conscious of death. You know, my mother's family is Chinese. The Chinese venerate their ancestors. You go very frequently to their grave sites. You wash the grave. You always remember it. And so we have a family plot in a cemetery in Australia, and that's where every member of my family is buried. And at the end of the day, that's probably where I will be buried. Um, and life is finite. Life is limited, but that doesn't mean. Many take that to mean, oh, I should live indulgently. I should live in the moment. But because I know my life is finite, I want to be able to live forever. And the only proven way of living forever is to leave an intellectual legacy to the future.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like it's really hit me recently. Listen, I'm 28 years old, but I think as you go through your 20s, there's almost this feeling of invincibility. I'll never get sick. I'm never gonna die. I can take on the world. I can do anything I want. And then for some people, it hits them later on in life. For me, it certainly hit me earlier, where it's like, oh, this is all going to zero. Like one day, I just won't be here. So I more so think of that, and I love your point about legacy. Um, I guess I mostly think about it on a day to day basis, like in regards to some of my fears, especially when it comes to judgment of other people. It's like, why do I care what that person thinks of me? Like they're gonna be dead one day, I'll be dead one day, and then nobody's gonna remember like any of that, or the fact that they were judging me, or the fact that they thought,
Well, yeah, and so there, that is a very nihilistic way to think
right,
about the world.
right,
But um, great rivalries, great jealousies have been documented throughout history. Think about Caesar and Pompey and Cleopatra, right? Over 2,000 years ago, but still written about and read about and analyzed in the annals of history. So, do you want to uh, have a jealousy so small that it gets ignored to history, or to have a rivalry so great that it will be chronicled and remembered forever?
I think I'm prepared to answer that question, but it's a good one. I mean, you're right, and in my opinion, that there is also a balance there, right? Like to your point, you don't want to be too much of a nihilist because then nothing matters, and then, right? It's like, so what? Like, what do you truly care about? But you also don't want to think too much about maybe some of the consequences of your actions when it comes to what is someone going to think of me and stuff. So I guess that's been mostly my point, especially as someone. And again, I've opened up on this podcast about it. Like I used to think, I used to think all the time, like, well, what does this person think? Like, oh, did I do something wrong there? Now, very clearly beyond that. But just thinking about death in a funny way actually has helped me kind of conquer that feeling of, and especially the feeling of failure too. It's like, what are you afraid of? That you're gonna fail, and then what? Right? Like,
Well, so I don't often think about how other people view me. It doesn't bother me that
mm-hmm.
that I have very harsh critics. And there are some very powerful people who very much dislike me and everything that I stand for. But what I ask myself is, how do my actions today not influence the opinions of others, but how are the actions that I am taking um, advancing the mission and the goal that I have put myself on? And very few people have a clearly articulated goal for their life that materially contributes to the human condition. And I find that when I meet those people who have very strong goal orientation, we are never at odds. It's always complementary.
What's your advice for someone? I have a specific person I'm talking to if you're listening to this podcast, but for someone who's still searching for that goal, that life mission, what's step one?
Well, step one is to understand your values. And if you don't understand your values, the very first question that I would pose to you is, do you want to lead an extraordinary life or do you want to lead an ordinary life? And if you want to lead an ordinary life, you can do what ordinary people do and you will get what ordinary people get. That's probably not a very good outcome in these days. And if you want to lead an extraordinary life, it will require extraordinary sacrifice and you may have the opportunity to have extraordinary outcomes. And for most people, they want the extraordinary outcomes. They want the mansions, the penthouses, the private jets, but they don't want to make the extraordinary sacrifices.
Trying to think how I want to phrase this question. Um, for those who do want an extraordinary life, and let's say I came to you and I said, Aaron, I'm ready. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. I want to be extraordinary. I want to live this extraordinary life. Here's my life's mission. Here's my goal. I want to do X, Y, and Z. What would your answer be to the following question? What is the price of living an extraordinary life that most people do not realize? Or I guess put in more simple terms, what is the price of success?
The price of success is only known to a few. And therefore, the challenges and the sacrifices that one has to make are only appreciable to those who have also made those tremendous sacrifices. Um, and the decision to make like if you wish to have an extraordinary life, you can't make that decision at 40. You probably can't even make that decision at 30. If you truly want to have a historic, meaningful life uh, that fundamentally elevates the human species, you probably have to make that decision to be extraordinary as a teenager, or it starts very, very early because the compound effects are so great. Like I graduated from high school, 16, went on to university, graduated 2 years later for my undergraduate, right? Had a PhD. I think by the time it's 21, 22. And these things compound, right? By the time I was finishing my PhD, like my friends from high school were barely finishing their undergraduate degrees. Um, and so ultimately, uh, there's this deep compound effect. Yes, if you make the decision to have an extraordinary life at 40 and change your life path, maybe you can marginally improve your life condition. But truly to be someone historic, you have to make that decision super early.
What's the role of luck in all of this? And maybe a good question to ask here, which I've asked on the podcast many times, and I'm always interested to hear what my guest response is. But if you were to simulate the world 1,000 times, and how many of those simulations do you more or less end up where you are today? And I think it kind of, it tries, I guess, to put a value on the importance of luck, maybe a bit. So I'm interested to hear what your answer is.
I don't tend to believe in luck very much. I've been blessed by extraordinary circumstances. Um, a lot of people say, a lot of journalists would say, oh, well, Aaron, you were just so lucky. You were 24 years old, and Peter Thiel, one of the richest men in the world, you just meet him at Oxford University, and he offered you a job that day, right? And then my retort to that is, well, it's pretty hard to get into Oxford. And Peter met hundreds of people that day on campus, but we struck up a unique and special bond very quickly that led to him giving me a job on the spot. Right? There was basically no luck. There was a lot of strategy involved in that and preparation.
Were there any other moments in your life that people may say you got lucky?
A lot of people will say, well, you were born into this extraordinary family. My father is a professor of medicine, my mother is a teacher, my grandmother was a successful entrepreneur, and we have a dynastic family property business. You were born into these extraordinary circumstances. And I say, well, lots of people were born into extraordinary circumstances. My parents weren't senators or anything like that. Um, and, I've got two brothers. They lead very normal lives. And you make what you will of the opportunities presented before you.
I only bring up the topic of luck because I think a lot of people use luck to discredit the success of others. They'll say, we just talked about some instances where people may try to discredit your own success by, just labeling it as luck. But even if you look at other entrepreneurs, they'll say, well, Jeff Bezos got lucky because he was born at the right time and he had the right idea and the internet was exploding. But then you take the flip side of that and it's like, yeah, also millions of other people were born in that same exact, were alive in that same exact time period. So what are you trying to say? I mean, nobody else executed on the idea of an online bookstore that has now turned into, the largest online retail store in the world, right? So I don't know, like luck is always interesting, and I kind of go back and forth on the importance of luck. I do think that you do manufacture a lot of the situations that you're in ultimately.
Mhm.
To your point, you got into Oxford. You presented yourself in a way that led to a job. So I don't know. It's always a tricky subject, but I tend to lean towards the side of I think luck is a lazy excuse.
I agree with that. I agree with that. And I think you can create your own luck by putting yourself in the right circumstances and presenting yourself in the right way. Um, and, like I interview hundreds of young people every year, in particular for associate level roles here at Enhanced. And the ones that we offer jobs to, they say, "Oh, I'm so lucky. This is my big break." I'm like, no, you're lucky from your point of view, but from our point of view, I just made a rational selection among lots of candidates for whom most were uh, woefully ill prepared for their interviews. Like it shocks me that nearly 50% of people don't show up to their interviews on time. And all of those that show up to their interviews, probably only 10% are like accurately prepared, where they have like listened to, you know, every podcast that I've been on, right? They've read every news article written about us, right? If you want a job working for me, all you have to do is literally listen to 100 YouTube videos of me talking and read the 100 plus news articles, long form articles that have been written about us. And if you uh, captured all that publicly available information, I'd hire you in a heartbeat.
Somebody said this on Twitter, and I'll never forget it. But they said that in today's day and age, it's never been easier to be successful, but it's also never been easier to be a nobody. And I think to the point that you're making, like if you look around, how many people are just watching Netflix, for X amount of hours a day. Not to say that any amount of Netflix is bad, but
Mhm.
certainly there's a point where it's like, all right, maybe you should get up off the couch and do something. You can get food delivered to your door without getting up. You can, I mean, all of your entertainment is on your phone or
It's
on your
convenience
TV.
economy, right?
Right.
And so I can teach you all day about strategy. I can teach you all day about execution, but then it comes back to that fundamental thing about motivation, right? How do you get people to take that first step? And I think and maybe you're born with it or not, you either want to be extraordinary or you're just happy being ordinary, right? And those who have committed to leading in the extraordinary life are willing to take those first steps, to be rejected hundreds, if not thousands of times, right? So, like, who is it that succeeds in a bar? You go to a singles bar, right? Uh, is it the most attractive guy? No, it's the most persistent, the one who accepts that he will be rejected 9 times out of 10, right? Same thing in sales, right? You think you can just call someone up and sell them a product, right? You're going to fail. You have to know you're going to be rejected 99 out of 100 times. As a startup entrepreneur, when I raise capital, 99 out of 100 investors say no, right? But then those are the one, but there it's that rare opportunity. What if they say yes? And and so many people are paralyzed by the fear of rejection. They say, "Oh, I can't go up and talk to that pretty girl because what if she says no?" Well, you may feel embarrassed for a slight minute there, but imagine what if she says yes, right? You could live a long and happy life together, right? What about that customer? What about that deal? What about that investor? Right? You have to be so comfortable with rejection to be successful in this world.
Quieting your ego, right? I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to, in my opinion. I don't know if you've ever seen this video. If I can find it, I will put it as like a little transition here in this interview. But there's this guy who did like what was it, like 100-day rejection challenge, something along those lines. This was filmed maybe like 10 years ago, but he would have like for each, every day, obviously, he would have one thing that he had to go do. So it started off simple, so for example, he'd go to Starbucks and he'd ask for a free coffee.
Mhm.
The second day he would ask a cop to ride in his car.
Mhm.
The third day he would go up to a Southwest, Airlines agent and be like, "Hey, can I just make an announcement on the loudspeaker?" And he did this for 100 days, and at the end of the 100 days, and I think it's online. I'll include a link. You can actually do it as well. And I mean, it said it profoundly changed his life because of the very reasons that you just outlined. He just got over the fear of rejection, and he was like, "All right, I've seen the worst. I've experienced people saying no. All right, you just move on. Like, what's the worst that could happen?" But people don't realize it until you go through it. Like, you have to practice that and get good at
Yeah,
handling that
you
rejection.
yeah, you just have to practice, practice, practice. And the greatest opportunities that have happened in my life have come simply from the fact that I have asked for them, right? Um, and like, the New York Stock Exchange, the greatest financial institution in the world, the center of global capitalism, anchored my venture capital fund. Why? Because I met the vice chairman at an event. We went out, we struck up a friendship, we went out for drinks, and I said, I have this idea. Would you be interested in backing it? And he was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. Right. And you will only get what you ask for from the world.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to summarize it. Aaron, I wanted to ask you. This is tied to the enhanced games, and I thought this. I guess you'll be the ultimate. You'll have the last say in if this is a fun exercise or not. But I thought it'd be fun if you could steel man the opposition. So people who say that enhanced games are bad, that they're going to have a negative impact on society. Let's say you're part of that crowd for a second. How would you frame your argument against the enhanced games? Like, what is the strongest argument against what you're building?
I've done thousands and thousands of interviews. I have not found a convincing argument against what we are doing. Right. The one that some people say is, oh, what about the children? And my response to that is, well, um, McDonald's and Coca-Cola have killed hundreds of millions of people, and they're the two biggest sponsors of Olympic sport. The one that may be convincing is that if the enhanced games are successful, we will become the dominant mode of human competition, and we will normalize enhancement, and then there will be a pressure to become enhanced, not just for athletes, but maybe for young people or for society writ large. But I say that's probably a good thing, right? Shouldn't we all be stronger and faster and younger and more productive for longer? And who's going to want to be a human 1.0 when human 2.0 exists? And, uh, you know, I've done thousands and thousands of interviews, right? I feel that I have not received a criticism that I don't have a cogent answer for.
But what do you say to those who bring up the negative effects of enhancement, steroid use? What do you say to those people? Just
I say,
the health effects.
yeah. So, number one, let's not base this on personal anecdotes, but scientific evidence. So the evidence is, and Professor David Nutt at Imperial College London did an excellent survey about this published in The Lancet in 2012, is that anabolic steroids, self-administered, are significantly safer than alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, three substances that we accept in our society. I believe, and actually another podcaster asked me this question. He asked me, what was my Oxford admissions essay? So I wrote it in 2007, and it was about the perniciousness of the anti-risk culture. So it's like we don't take enough risk, and we should take more healthy, positive risk. And I was an inarticulate 20. What was I? I was 22 years old back then. Um, because Jonathan Haidt from NYU coined the right term, which is safety culture. So this obsession about always being safe, intellectually safe, physically safe, has destroyed our risk tolerance. Karenism is another term for it. And so, um, why is that important? Is because we need to take risk as a society, right? To become better and stronger and more capable, we must take risk. And there are many activities, and this is my answer to my critics, that are risky, that we accept in human society, such as going to space, which has a 1 out of 16 chance of fatality, or exploring the high seas, or climbing Mount Everest, which in its early days had a 1 out of 10 chance of fatality. And so the enhanced games, significantly less risk than going to space or climbing Mount Everest. And those are two very noble aspirations of our society.
How does this all fail? How do the enhanced games fail?
I don't think they can fail. There's a sign up in my office that says the enhanced games are inevitable. Why are they inevitable? Not because I will achieve them, but because we have laid the intellectual framework and the business model that will allow them to come into existence. And so even if I don't succeed, someone else will do it. It might take a few decades, but it is inevitable, because the most important thing is in the history of business is that you cannot bet against technology. So those companies that in the 90s who said, "Oh, this internet thing, it's all too complicated, too hard. We'll stick with our paper and faxes," they're dead, right? Right now, lots of companies are saying, "Oh, this AI thing, I don't understand it. It's too hard, too complex, too costly." They're going to be dead, right? You can never bet against technology. You can never bet against progress. And the international sports establishment has had an incumbent monopolistic position for so long. They have been allowed to bet against technology, but now we are fully challenging them, and it is never a winning bet to bet against technology and science.
I know you have to run, but I got a couple more questions for you. You brought up AI. How do you think AI impacts the world of sports?
So AI will make society more productive, just like the computer did, or just like the microprocessor, or the typewriter, or the pen. The productivity gains of our society, all the profits of capitalism are extracted by healthcare. That's why the US spends 18% of GDP on healthcare today, because it's the most profitable society in the world. The richest society should spend the most money on healthcare, because there's an irrationality about healthcare. Everything we do in capitalism, whether it's building bridges or tunnels, or companies like Amazon or Nvidia, generate profit. And how is that profit spent? It is on healthcare. And so no matter what happens in the structure of our society, more and more money will be spent on healthcare. And human enhancement will be a significant portion of that healthcare spend. The human enhancement value will not be measured in billions or trillions of dollars. It will be measured as a percentage of GDP. So I don't worry about AI. I think it's actually going to benefit our business and drive an exogenous growth to the sector as a whole, for which we are front and center in capturing.
Is there any validity to the AI doomsday arguments? AI is going to destroy the world.
So that is the classic argument that is always used by uh, anti-technology naysayers, the Luddites. So this is what the Luddites said about the machines in the Industrial Revolution. It's what teachers of my generation said about the personal computer. It's what our parents' generation said about television. We'll give you square eyes, right? And this is an anti-technology, anti-progress attitude that will condemn those safetyists to the history books. They will become irrelevant. And so we have to embrace technological change. AI, the cat is out of the bag. Human enhancement is here. It is going to happen. We are going to become superhumans. And if you're stuck in the mindset that you want to be a human 1.0, yes, you can live, suffer, and die, while some among us will become immortal superhumans.
I'm just gonna clip that part, and that will just be. Maybe we just make that last part the entire podcast. Just cut out everything else. The first 2-minute podcast that I've done. Well said, Aaron. I got a couple more. These are potentially maybe a little more fun, lighthearted, and then we'll let you go.
I've got 4 minutes.
4 minutes, perfect. We'll do these rapid fire. What do you believe in that is not changing?
That's the Jeff Bezos question.
I was gonna bring up Bezos as I set up the question, so I'm glad you got the reference.
Yes. So his version of it is that everyone will want faster shipping and cheaper prices, right?
Yep.
And my belief is that that no matter what, we will pay anything. Consumers will pay anything. Government will pay anything to make us younger and more productive for longer, right? Consumers will do it because we have a memory of our past. Like, how much would I pay to get my 25-year-old body back? Hundreds of millions of dollars, because I know it will pay dividends. How much will government pay? Well, it can be measured on tax receipts, right? Because if your population is younger, they can pay more taxes and be more productive. And I think no matter what happens in our society, no one wants to get old.
Yeah, that's. I don't know if you saw there. I think there was recent research that just came out of China, actually, where they were doing some anti-aging stuff, and actually were pretty successful. Now, I'm not going to get into the minute details because that's way over my head. But to your point, it seems like the anti-aging research and science is well on its way. Last question for you. If you could have a 30-minute conversation, we'll wrap here. If you could have a 30-minute conversation with any entrepreneur or athlete from history, who is it and why?
I'm a huge fan of Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King, but Martin Luther, the Protestant Reformation, 1517. And I think he's the greatest revolutionary in history. And every technological driven revolution is a byproduct of Luther. And he broke the greatest monopoly in human history, which was the Catholic Church's control of religion, economics, military, and politics of medieval Europe. And he would be the one I would like to speak to.
What a way to end the podcast, Dr. Aron D'Souza. Aaron, real quick, before we leave, where can people find you and find out more about the Enhanced Games?
Enhance.com. You can also email me, Aron, Aron, at enhance.com, or find me on Instagram. I respond to every single message. right? I run a giant company, but I get hundreds of emails and DMs every day, and I will respond to every single one of them because I love hearing from our fans, our critics, and our detractors all alike.
I can attest to that because you responded to my email. Aron, it's been a pleasure. And congrats again on your award for the most unique spelling of Aron. We'll get that plaque to you over soon. Can't thank you again enough for your time. Wish you all the best, and hopefully let's stay in touch.
Thanks. Bye bye.